Napoleon Bonaparte. You've probably heard the name. He was the guy who wanted to conquer the world. Imagine this, a short guy, barely taller than a door, but with big dreams of ruling Europe. People laughed at his height, but Napoleon didn't care. He became one of the most famous people in history. Talk about big dreams. Napoleon's height? Not as tiny as people think. He was about 5 feet 6, pretty normal for his time. But people loved to make fun of him because he wasn't tall like other leaders. To make up for it, he built a huge ego. And let's be real, who wouldn't if you were on your way to conquer the world? Napoleon wasn't born with a golden spoon in his mouth. He came from a small island called Corsica where he wasn't rich. But he was smart and loved reading about military strategy. At age 9, he moved to France to study and quickly showed he was not your average kid. He was destined for greatness. Napoleon was the king of being extra. From wearing huge hats to making dramatic entrances, he loved showing off. His enemies didn't take him seriously at first, but then, boom, he won. That's when everyone started paying attention. Napoleon wasn't satisfied just being a general. He wanted more. He weaseled his way up through politics, making alliances and using his army to get to the top. Before anyone knew it, he was the ruler of France, saying, "All hail me." Ever heard of the Napoleon complex? It's when short people act extra tough to prove they're not weak. Well, Napoleon was actually average height for his time, but he didn't mind leaning into the joke. He wanted to show that size doesn't matter when you've got a big ego. Napoleon was madly in love with Josephine. He sent her tons of gifts like palaces and jewels, but Josephine couldn't have kids, which made Napoleon a little, well, grumpy. But hey, he still loved her. Love is complicated, right? Napoleon was known for winning epic battles, and the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805 was one of his best. He tricked the enemy into thinking he was weak, then boom, he outsmarted them and won. The guy was like a chess master, but with actual armies. Napoleon didn't just conquer land, he changed the way Europe worked. He brought in new laws like the Napoleonic Code, which made everyone equal under the law. His influence was so huge that we still see it today in some countries' laws. After so many victories, Napoleon finally met his match at the Battle of Leipzig in 1813. He faced a huge alliance of enemies, and yep, he lost. But hey, everyone has a bad day, right? Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812 was one of his biggest failures. The cold was so intense that soldiers were freezing faster than they could fight. Napoleon learned the hard way that you don't mess with Russian winter. After being defeated, Napoleon was sent to Elba, a tiny island. You'd think he would relax, right? Nope, he escaped in a year and came back to France like, "Surprise, I'm back." Napoleon's comeback didn't last long. At the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, he faced a bunch of enemies and yep, lost again. This time it was over for good. Napoleon's reign of power? Done. After Waterloo, Napoleon was sent to the island of St. Helena where he couldn't escape. But even there, he couldn't stop thinking about his past glory. Poor guy was stuck, but still dreaming big. Even though Napoleon lost his empire, he's still famous today. People remember him for his military genius and for changing the way the world looked at laws. His impact is so big, it's like his shadow stretches across history, even though he wasn't around for long. Napoleon didn't just make wars, he made rules. The Napoleonic Code was a set of laws that gave people more rights and made sure everyone was treated equally. It was like creating the rules of the game for modern society, and they're still used in some countries today. Napoleon had an army of super smart leaders called marshals. These guys were amazing soldiers who helped him win battle after battle. But here's the twist. Some of them turned against him when things got tough. Looks like even Napoleon couldn't keep everyone on his side forever. After being sent to Elba, Napoleon wasn't done. Nope. He escaped, gathered an army, and returned to France like, "Surprise, I'm back!" France cheered, but it didn't last. Still, his escape was pretty impressive. Napoleon didn't just win battles, he invented new ways of fighting. He taught his soldiers to move fast and use tricks to outsmart enemies. Even today, military leaders study his strategies like a video game cheat code. Napoleon wasn't all about wars, he also loved art. He spent a lot of time commissioning fancy portraits of himself, and guess what? He even had an artist paint him like a Roman emperor. Napoleon was like, if you're gonna rule, you've got to look good doing it. Napoleon had trouble on the seas. The Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 was a major loss for him. He was trying to invade Britain but got totally crushed by the British Navy. Looks like he was better with land battles than with boats. Napoleon loved smart people. He created schools where kids learned about math, science, and even military strategy. He wanted future leaders to be as brilliant as he was. Education? Napoleon thought it was the key to ruling the world. After all the battles and drama, Napoleon spent his last days on a small island called St. Helena. It was far from the glory of France. But even in exile, he couldn't stop thinking about his past. He spent his days writing, dreaming, and, well, occasionally regretting his decisions.